Yo, what's going on, guys? Mike Hill, the Wholesaling Titan here. And today's video is going to be kind of different and a very special one for me. I'm going to try not to like tear up or something. But today I'm going to take you through my journey. I'm going to talk to you about how I started in this business, how I went from someone very, very dissatisfied with the corporate world to having $0 to how I did my first deal without spending a penny up to today in some of the most relevant periods in my life, where now I'm able to work from, run my wholesaling business, hundreds of deals done, worked with students, changed their lives, and where I haven't set foot in an office for 13 plus years, never have a boss. I work when I want, where I want. And I want to tell you the story in a little bit more detail. Things to watch out for, mistakes that I've made, the journey I've made. You learn a lot as you go, but there are some things where if I knew certain things a little bit sooner, I could have cut that time down by like more than half. Certain pitfalls to watch out for, certain obstacles, stories that maybe stick out, some scams that I've run into. And for a lot of you, I think this would just be helpful and relatable. Now, a lot of you may know some of my stories. Many of them I've told before, but some of them I've given you kind of the Cliff Notes version, so they're a little bit shorter. Some things, it's been some time, it's been over a decade, so I'm not exactly clear on specific dates, but I'll do my best to give you that. And I think you'll just find it very helpful. It'll be more detailed. Now, I do want you to watch this in its entirety. I think it'll be good for obviously for you and also good for my channel why I'm saying that, right? So I'm not like BSing you by saying this, but I'm gonna give you some details I haven't given before, meaning I might say some names. I'm going to talk to you about things that I did that maybe I shouldn't have done. I played in some gray areas, downright some illegal things. So I'll tell you not to do that, but I don't know if it's rough or if I might have to like take some of it down or put it on private. So watch it now, just in case. I'm not saying that in like a false way. It's just I don't know how this is going to turn out. So anyway, thank you for watching today. This is going to be, I think, a special video for me, and it's probably going to be pretty damn long because I'm completely unscripted, just going off the top of my head here, and I don't know, maybe I'll end up breaking it up into several videos. It'd be like a little series or playlist. But anyway, I'm going to take you guys back all the way to my childhood. Not that far back, but I am, for those who don't know, a first generation uh, U.S. citizen. I'm the first person in my family, my immediate family, born here. So both of my parents are immigrants, right? They were born in Jamaica, came here, and even though a lot of society still subscribes to go to school, get a good education, get a good job, and that will be your ticket to the good life, I feel like that's even more pronounced in Caribbean families. If anyone watching here is from a Caribbean family, you guys probably know what I'm talking about. So, for example, we were very strict in our upbringing. I didn't really get timeouts, right? And my mom watches some of my videos, so not too detailed, but if you've ever been, instead of timeout, you got a shoe or a hanger or an extension cord or a belt, or you know what I'm talking about in terms of your levels of discipline. But it was always ingrained in me. Sorry, mom, if you're watching, but it was always ingrained in me to do very, very well in school. And so I did. I was actually did very, very well through high school, great GPA. And I did like outside extracurricular things. I was the president of my entire school, which was K through 12 school. I went to a private school. So I did have a lot of advantages starting out. I do not have like I was homeless living under a bridge and I went to wholesale and I got successful. I don't have that story. That story is actually great for marketing. People would be like, I went to prison and, now I'm doing great. I don't have that story, right? I grew up with a lot of privileges. My parents worked very hard for that. My mom was an attorney and my dad worked in law enforcement. So I did end up getting into after high school, doing very, very well grade wise, because that was instilled in me that this was the ticket to the good life. I got into Duke University. At the time that I got in 2002, Duke was up there in terms of the official college rankings in the US, top 5. I think that year, I think it was like Yale was number 1 and maybe Princeton 2, and Duke was up there with like Harvard, um, and whoever else is up there, Cornell. But it was great. It was for me. It was bragging rights. It was bragging rights for my parents. And so I was like, listen, man, I got into Duke. Like I got my future made. Like it's done. And my parents were in this place where they had done very well for themselves. And so again, I don't have that rags to riches story, although I do have students who do have those stories, and I get to take credit because they've given me those testimonials. So if you want to check out even my YouTube channel, there's a testimonial from a guy named Morrow. This guy was literally homeless, living on the beach, on Hollywood Beach down here. He was showering literally at the showers in the beach, and he gives a testimonial to me. So Morrow, thanks for that, where he made $22,000 on his first deal with no money at all. I did my first deal with no money too, but again, he was coming from a much rougher situation than I was. So anyway, I get into Duke, and my parents did so well in life that they certainly helped me out very much. Like they gave me financial assistance, paid for stuff. So thanks, mom and dad. But they didn't like make enough where they could pay for my whole education. Remember, this is very elite university, but they also didn't make like as little as to the point where I got a lot of financial aid. So the majority of my college education was paid for by means of student loans. And I should have taken accountability. I do now. But at that point, like the process, I just didn't know any better. So I'm not blaming anybody, but it's an issue I have a little bit with our current education system, in that they were just like, okay, FAFSA something. I don't even remember that stuff. They were like, sign this doc, sign this doc, sign this doc, and you'll have all the money you need for college. I was like, cool. All right. So I did that. And ultimately, between that and housing, and we could pay for food with our, the more loans we got, we could just order like steaks every night. I know, dumb on my part, but I ended up going into debt between all that stuff, like about $250,000. But I was cool with it because I was in this place, this headspace where I was like, no matter how much I spend, I'm getting a degree from Duke University, one of the topmost elite schools in the world. My life is made. I'm going to get out of college. I'll probably be a millionaire within 2 years. That was my mentality at the time. And so it's just this narrative that society has. And even if you're not in an elite university, you've probably still heard that, right? Go to school, get a good job, get your degree, get a good job, and you'll be fine. And obviously, right, it didn't really work out that way. So again, some of you guys know the short version of this story, but now I'm going to give you some details I've never discussed, publicly before. So after I graduated, I had my daughter relatively young, not that young. I was 26 years old. And then her mom at the time was from South Dakota. So I decided to go back there because she was doing some, I think it was like college classes or something. So I went and lived out there for a bit. Now, before I went out there, I had done an internship with a very high-end like hotel, a chain that managed a lot of hotels in Manhattan throughout New York, and we would do revenue management. So I had experience in the hotels, but from like the revenue side. But when I went out there, South Dakota, it's very limited options, but I could at least attach like hotels to my resume, and I got a job with a hotel chain, IHG Hotels. And my first job out of college with like $250,000 in debt. Now I can't remember if it was 32,000 or if it was 39,000. So I usually say I was making about 35,000, but it's like, man, that's not what I signed up for with this degree, and I got student loan payments due all the time. But I was still pretty ignorant. I was like, oh, 30 plus, that's enough money. I got to figure out how to invest this money, maybe playing in stock markets or something. I got to learn this stuff because college, quite frankly, I was a little bit disappointed. They never told me how to invest. I didn't know how to file my taxes. I didn't know how to, invest in stocks or any investments to make. So then I start looking, right? And I come across this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Now, it's funny because so many of you guys I talk to, that's how you found wholesaling, or that's how you got interested in entrepreneurship, maybe how you found me. And I was not some voracious reader. Right now, I read several books a month, but this is the first book that was not like assigned to me in college. That was a nonfiction book that I wanted to read. And guys, once I got in, I was mesmerized, man. This is the stuff like, man, I'd be TMI. I'd be like on the toilet reading this stuff. Like I couldn't put the book down. And that's where I thought that book was going to teach me a little bit more about like how to invest, but it changed my mindset. That's when I I always thought it'd be cool to be an entrepreneur, but that's the book that really set it in for me. Okay. So now I'll bring that back to the job I had. The job I was doing at that time, I was in charge of like the sales and the banquet management. So these were people who would have events at this hotel. So things like weddings and I don't know, sweet 16s and conferences and seminars. So after I read this book, this rich dad thing, I'm like, man, I gotta figure out how to do this. And this is one of the parts I was telling you, like, I usually don't talk about this part of the story because this might be, I don't, against the law. I don't know. So anyway, I'm in charge. The Rich Dad Company is putting on this seminar, and the title is How to Invest in Real Estate with No Money Down. And this is something I don't want to call it a scam, but this is something I just want to make some of you guys aware of. And it's actually kind of clever the way they did this. But what happened is I was in charge of setting up for this seminar, but I knew that they were coming, and I had just read this book. So I was sneaky and not, I don't know, not the most ethical person. I don't know. I was working. I couldn't attend this thing. I didn't know. And it was a 3-day seminar. Now, apparently, the way they get people into the 3-day seminar is they give free tickets for a 1-day seminar. And then at the 1-day seminar, they say, okay, well, listen, if you want to come to a 3-day seminar, it's usually $2,000. But anyone interested, stand up right now. Come to the front of the room. I don't know if they still do this, but like, it's sketch, but it's a little bit ingenious, right? And there are other companies that like I would attend later these seminars in the future. I won't name all the names. One rhymes with Morchin Milders. Anyway, so I knew they were coming, and I was in charge of AV. So that means they would have wireless microphones they would talk through, and in the back, you have your setup. I don't even know what you call that stuff. All your AV systems, and don't think low of me, okay? This a long time ago, but I went to Best Buy and I bought a digital recorder because I couldn't be in the room the whole time. And I went and I put the digital recorder in between the sound system and their microphone, and I turned it on basically for 3 days. And I don't think I've ever told anyone that, and that's why I was saying I might need to take this down. But anyway, so they had this whole seminar, and I couldn't be in the room the whole time, but I would go home at night after each day and listen to it. And this is where I actually really, really first learned about wholesaling. And the information they gave was actually accurate. It was true. It was great. Their sales process was a little whatever, right? So the first day they were just talking about like testimonials and people who had done this and showing like proof of concept, stuff like that. Totally cool. Great. I got excited. The second day, their pitch was like, hey, man, the people who are good at real estate, they have one skill. That one skill is negotiation. So they had all these like talks and people talking about how you have to be a good negotiator. And they played like I forget the rich dad game. Some of you guys know what I'm talking about. It's not rat race. If you know, put it in the comments for me, right? But they play that game. And then at the end, they said, okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to play a game. We're going to see who is the best person at negotiating. And we're going to give you guys a challenge. And they also said like, oh, people, you don't use your own money, right? You use other people's money, but you can buy like, a $200,000 house with just like a line of credit. But most credit companies will increase your credit. All you got to do is ask, right? So they went through this whole pitch. And then the challenge at the end of the day, they were like, okay, we're going to give a challenge. Everyone go home tonight is your homework. You're going to call your credit card companies, and whoever gets their limit raised the highest wins a prize on day 3. Right? So, day 3, right? They get there, and then everyone's talking. I got my credit raised 10,000 or 5,000, whatever. And they said, okay, well now we need to work with you guys individually. And they would take everyone out of the room one at a time. And this, as I'm like serving these people, and so me working the event and combined with the recording and listening in. These people outside the room because I was nosy, obviously, and I knew what was going on. What they did is with that raised credit limit, they were pitching them on coaching for about $30,000 that people were putting on credit cards. And, you don't need to do that, right? That's crazy work. But like I said in this video, I'm just making you guys aware of stories that I never told before. And, maybe you've been there, maybe you found some value in that. And personally, it's funny because years and years later, I actually had a student that came. This wasn't the Rich Dad, but it was a very similar company. I won't say that name. but they put 30,000 on a credit card. They went 2 years without ever doing a deal. And then they came to me into my one-on-one coaching. We did their first deal within the first 2 months. So when we were talking about it, I was like, man, like what? Bro, like this is like 30 grand is not like a small amount of money. What happened? And they said, well, with that company, they gave him some training, and then they actually flew a coach down to meet them at their house one time. But he said after that, like, he could never get anyone on the phone. He was just sending an email, and maybe you get a reply, or maybe you wouldn't get a reply for like a couple of days. And if you know anything about this business, you need assistance in real time. And that's one thing I offer to my students. Not to plug me right in the middle of this, but that's what I do. And with he and I, we were talking constantly, and I got on the phone with sellers and buyers and title company, made sure this thing happened. So anyway, there's still good information there. And listen, man, if I'm being real, again, I spent 250K at Duke, and my first job was like 30 something. If you spend 30K on some mentorship or whatever, and it works out, and you make 100K that year, it's still good money. So I'm not like being a total hater, but I'm telling you, one, you don't need to do that, and two, something to look out for, and three, this is just my experience. Like, I witnessed this shit firsthand, so I'm not just like out here talking shit. Okay. So anyway, that was my intro into wholesaling. Now, at the same time, at that job making 30, whatever it was, 2.9, whatever, I was like, okay, this is not sustainable, right? So Jade, that's my daughter, by the way, her mom had finished up whatever school stuff she was doing. I was like, listen, there's no real opportunity here. And it's cold as shit, and I hate the cold. So I'm like, all right, let's start a life where there's opportunity, whatever. And my grandma, actually, my grandma, my auntie, my uncle were living in Florida. And I knew that eventually my parents, who were still in New York, would probably retire there. So I'm like, let's make this move to Florida. So on just a whim, and I'm like, there's going to be more opportunities, right? South Dakota, not too many people, not too many jobs, right? I'm going to Miami. I see office buildings. I see real estate. I'm starting to get the hint, like, okay, I don't have 30K to spend on this, but I'm sorry. Yeah, 30K to spend on this, but also my 30K job, I don't have any extra money to put into stocks or whatever it is, right? So we're like, okay, we're just gonna do it on a whim. We're just gonna say, God willing, like, I'm going off of faith. And my grandma says, okay, you can come and stay with me for a little bit until you get yourself situated. So we drive cross country. Oh, another note on this. When we were in South Dakota, we had one car. Now, I don't know if you know this, but South Dakota is cold as shit. And I wanted Jade and Jade's mom to, like, God forbid something happened, have the car. I went to Walmart and bought a bicycle. I used to ride my bicycle from our house, like, I don't know, a mile or two in snow up to like my knees in a thin suit because I had to look professional because it's corporate America, right? To this hotel job. There's probably a point that I wanted to make there, but I think it's just like the expectations for corporate America sometimes are very high. You make a lot of sacrifices. You're always there. You work very hard. And then I'm just not sure like the payoff is there for the vast majority of people. Anyway, fast forward. We drive cross country. We get to my grandma's house. I'm like 26, 27, and we're living in a small room in my grandma's house. So I'm there. I have no job. I have no job prospects. I have maybe $600 in savings. I don't have obviously my own place, so we're staying with grandma. I don't have a car, any of that stuff. So for me, it's very much an ego blow, right? I'm supposed to be providing for my family, for my daughter. She's young. I still got to pay for diapers and all this stuff. And I'm like, I got to make something happen fast. But I know about this wholesaling thing, and I could do this, right? So now I start like kind of Google searching stuff. And I find this ebook online. It's called, tell you in a minute, Flip Your Way to Financial Freedom by Preston Ely. Some of you guys may know him to this day. Man, that guy's amazing. That guy really changed my life. And sometimes, when I'm doing a webinar, I only have 10 minutes to give my intro, so I like skip over that part. But that's where I read this detailed ebook. I probably bought it. It's probably like $97 or something. So I bought that ebook with some of the last of my money. I don't have a job at this point. And I learned about this business, and I'm like, man, I could definitely do that, but I don't know how. But one thing he says, two things I remember from that book is, one, get a mentor. You need a mentor. I didn't have money for a mentor, but he's also like, start networking with people and, go to RIA meetings. So now we get into the story of what I did when I didn't have, I found a RIA meeting online through, we're in a virtual world now. I don't even know if it still exists. It's called meetup.com. And I just typed in real estate and I found this real estate meeting that was in Boca Raton, Florida. And I'm like, I look it up a little bit, right? And I'm like, okay, this is how I'm going to change my life. And what I did, two things. One, I looked up, I don't even know if I'm sure who was putting on the meeting, but I remember who owned the group, and it was Lex Levinrad, who later would end up being my mentor. But what I did was I went and Googled him, or maybe it was Facebook, I don't remember, right? But I found his information. Oh, I think it was LinkedIn, actually. I found his information, and what I did is I looked up, stuff about him, and I wrote him a letter. And I typed it up, and I said, I gave him my backstory. This is who I am. I was like, I looked at his stuff online. I was like, I don't have money for mentorship, but I just want to give you some value. And if you would take me on as a mentee, because I learned that from the book, I was like, I would love to, I'll work with you, and then I will split my first deal or first couple deals. I just want to learn. But also, if there's any, no, actually, I'm sorry. I didn't put that in the letter. I said that to him later. I said, if there's any way that I can give you value, I'm happy to go to your properties. I'll take pictures for you. I'll do tours for it. Like whatever you need, I will go and do that. All right. So that's what I put in the letter. Now, when I wanted to go to the meeting, the door fee was $15. Guys, I kid you not, I did not have $15. Like I had a jar of change still in the house, and I'm not gonna go show up to a meeting with fucking change, right? So I went to the supermarket. I went to Publix. They had a Coinstar machine. So some of you guys know what I'm talking about. You dump in all the coins, it gives you back cash. Takes a little fee, right? But gives you cash. That's the cash that I use to go to that meeting. So another takeaway from this video is sometimes two things, right? You got to be willing to go all in. You got to be willing to do whatever it takes. You got to have faith in this thing that this is what's going to work, and you got to be laser focused. Another part of the story I think I left out, again, not completely clear on the timeline. This might have been after the first meeting, but somewhere around here, I still had a little bit of shiny object syndrome. And I was looking into other things. Like I was pretty sold on wholesaling. This might have been a little bit before, but I had like a cousin who was telling me about how like trying to get me like some MLM shit, right? And there was one thing I was like trying to blog, and then there was some company called like, I think it was like Empower Network. And it's similar even nowadays, things like drop shipping and I don't know, crypto investment. And the thing is, listen, there are definitely people being successful there. But if you're trying to do everything, if you think, oh, let me try a little bit of everything, kind of see what works, it doesn't work that way. You pick first, and then you say there's no plan B, okay? And you move forward with that. And so that was a mistake. I don't remember if it was before this meeting or after, whatever. But I know I tried some of that with the last dollars I had. It might have been a little after, because I did have to invest some money. I'm not talking about a lot. I'm talking like maybe $30 a month for one of them or something. But also remember, some of those businesses, right? Like if you want to do crypto, shit, you need some money to invest. You want to do drop shipping, you have to invest some money first. Even if you want to drive Uber, you need a car. You need car insurance. Like you can't legitimately start those businesses with absolutely nothing. And I did that with wholesaling. But anyway, see, I told you I'm going off script, guys. So it's all over the place. Okay, so I get to the meeting, and the first thing I do is hand Lex my letter. Okay. And I think it was maybe after that meeting or something. That's where I gave him the pitch of like, I'll if you mentor me, right, I'll give you a percentage, or we'll split my first deal or whatever. And he kind of laughed me off. And at that point, I was like, man, this is a good pitch. What do you mean? I'll do all the work. You get paid. Why do I have to pay you anything? And it's only after years later when I started my own mentorship, because initially, first people I took on, I made them that deal. I see why. Like if you're in that position, I'm just telling you, like, I'm not trying to be a hater or tell you like, oh, you need to pay me or pay somebody, whatever. But what I am saying is that pitch, it sounds good to you in your head, but what you're essentially saying to someone with experience and knows how to do this is like, if you give me your time, which is your most valuable resource, your energy, your expertise, I will, do some stuff and give you half of what you could have done on your own. Also, in an industry with a drop-off rate, most people talk a big game. Like 90% of people just quit. So it's almost like, you go into university or something, you saying like, okay, well, pay all the teachers to teach me, give me all my housing, give me my books, like give me all that shit, and then I will, become the doctor. And when I do, I'll kind of pay you back half of, whatever. Like, I'm just saying, if you guys are making that pitch to people, because I get that a lot, and when I say like, I can't really do that, I'll still work with people. If you bring me a deal, I'll split it with you 50-50. But in terms of like the mentorship I do, I put in a lot of work to that, right? It's not uncommon for new mentees. Like, we'll be talking daily sometimes, not always like these long conversations, but at least texting back and forth. Like, it's a lot of work. And I don't coach like hundreds of people, right? My active mentees is about 10 at a time at max. So that didn't make sense to me at the time why he would reject that, but I get it now. And I'm telling you, if you're making that pitch, the first thing is that you want to give value first if you're trying to work with somebody, okay, in the business. And that's a good way a lot of times to get your feet wet. So while he kind of laughed me off on that pitch, he did read my letter. And he always remembered that from me, even before I became one of his mentees. And I remember I started going to those meetings more or less religiously. Every time we had a meeting, I was there. And there were times where Lex didn't even remember my name, but he remembered me as the guy who presented him with a letter. And he would tell that story to our whole meeting, our whole group, before I became a mentee. And then afterwards, after I had success, and I would come up and give testimonials and talk in front of people to the group. Like, we always talked about that. So again, a lesson here is always start by giving value, especially if you're trying to work, with somebody who has some experience. So anyway, I know I'm going all over the place here, but during that meeting, I go and sit down, and initially, it was very intimidating for me, right? Like, I'm literally the youngest guy there, or one of the youngest guys there. I don't know anything about anything besides my ebook. And these are guys talking about hard money and how they're using their IRA and their Roth. And I'm like, I don't have any of this shit. Most people are older than me. I'm a guy. Some of this is just internal, but like, I'm a minority. Like, most of these guys are older white guys. I'm like, man, I don't really fit in here. None of that matters, but like, these are the internal struggles that some of you might have. And in some ways it's not real, but if you feel it, like, it's real, okay? But nonetheless, at that meeting, while I'm feeling all this internal resistance, and I still have faith in myself, I'm like, yeah, I know I could do this, but like, I'm intimidated. There's this kid, Lex is like, okay, well, now we're gonna have like success stories from students. So this kid comes up, and his name is Vitaly, and he's this Russian immigrant. So he's not born here. He got here semi recently, and he started with no money. He was he was working at Wendy's, he was making less than like $7 an hour. English was not his first language. Like, he's an immigrant. He didn't have money when he first started, to the point where he was going to his grandma's clubhouse in her community to like borrow paper. He was stealing paper to print out contracts, right? And he gets up and he's telling this story, and he's like, man, I'm on my 20 like second deal or something. I just bought my first car cash, and I quit that Wendy's job. I'm doing this full time. And I'm like, man, shit, I am like, $250,000 in debt. I'm supposed to be this smart guy. I come from, a certain level of privilege, and I'm struggling. And here this guy is, and he had the world against him, and he got a mentor with Lex. I think his grandma like did help him out at some point with that fee, but um, this guy's coming from Wendy's, sorry, and he's on a 20 something deal. So I remember that being like a moment where I'm like, listen, man, if this guy could do it, like, I can definitely do this. So that increased kind of my resolve. And then I started going to meet. I talked to him afterwards, and I was like, yo, I promise you I'm gonna be successful in this shit. And he also gave me this look like, sure, buddy. I hear that shit all the time. But nonetheless, years later, I would do deals, right, um with that regroup, right? And Lex would end up becoming my mentor. So at some point, I did have to get a job because I had a daughter. She had to eat, right? She needed diapers. So I got a job working still in the hospitality industry, but now I wasn't on the front end. I was back in revenue management. And I was making $50,000 a year, which at this point, even though it was better than 35-ish or whatever, one, I wasn't living in South Dakota. In South Dakota, my rent was like $400 a month. So I get this job, we get out of my grandma's house. I can rent an apartment. I think that apartment was maybe like, I don't know, 1200 a month, maybe a little more. I don't remember. Um, but then I had to get a car. I didn't have a car when I first came. Then I had to dress the part. So I had to buy some suits. They were cheap suits. They weren't tailored. They didn't fit well, but I had to wear a suit to work. And then, if I lived in the heart of Miami, my rent would have been a little more. So it was a little bit outside of Miami. So now I got this commute, right? And literally, I'm commuting like Miami traffic is crazy, right? I mean, you could literally be stuck in traffic, no exaggeration, like 2 hours there, 2 hours back. So that was kind of my life. In the beginning, it was, I had to do what I had to do because I had to pay some bills. But I was like, okay, based on the training, based on the groups I'm going to, like I know this shit is not for me. So even when I went there, I had to plan that like I'm getting out of here. And that's when I became very frugal. And even though like at the end of every month, I basically had more month than check left over, but somehow I ended up putting together $1,000 for a boot camp. And so that was like this 3-day boot camp. Like you got on the bus. It was with Lex, right, at the real group, and you went to foreclosed houses, and we walked inside, and we walked around, and Lex told us how to do the math. It was one day we spent a whole day in Home Depot just going over prices and stuff. I remember one day we walk into a house, and Lex goes, "You smell that?" And the house smells horrific. It smells like mold. Smells like cat piss. Everybody's like, gross. Like we couldn't stay in there long. He's like, "Yeah, but you know what? It's the smell of money." Right. And that's where I started to get my feet wet there. And it was after that boot camp. And you guys got to understand, man, like for me at that time, that was the last of every freaking penny that I had that I spent on that boot camp. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be a mentee, like not just the group shit, but like, you start where you are. So I did that. And, we had like this workshop and we did all that. And then eventually I ended up doing my first deal, right? And I did that with no money. Now, a lot of people, they tell their story about their first deal. And, I made 10K, I made 20K. I certainly have student in my coaching program right now. I think the record's like 55,000 for the first no money down deal. I got other stories, man. Oscar is another student. All this stuff you can look on my webpage. But another guy, Oscar, he did his first 2 deals first 2 deals ever in the same day. That was $40,000 total between 2 houses. The guy lives in New York. The deals are in Florida. Never saw the houses, never saw the sellers, never met sellers, never met the buyers, didn't put up a dime. But at that point, my first story is not that cool, man. My first deal was $3,100. Okay. But for me, it was like, yo, I did this and made more than I made in 2 weeks at this job where, like, yo, the office politics were terrible. Like, people talk about the backstabbing and the gossip, like all that shit was there. The fact that I had to wear a suit to work, the fact that I sat in a cubicle every day, the fact that I couldn't use my phone at work, the fact that I had to ask for a vacation and that got denied. The fact where I had to be there, working 60 plus hours a week while I'm still trying to wholesale on the side, right? All this stuff. And I was like, man, this shit ain't for me, man. I don't like having a boss. I don't like someone else telling me I have to be somewhere at a certain time. I got to do something I have to do. And even the backstab, there was crazy stuff. And the traffic alone, right? It was crazy. Anyway, I did this deal and it was like, I was so happy. And it's not because, well, for me, $3,000 to them was a lot of money, but it was like, yo, I made more, working, doing a little stuff part-time than I would have made in 2 weeks of my job. But it was more the proof of concept that like, yo, this thing works. I could do it. And at that point, I did that with no money. So the way that I did that is I actually, okay, you go and there's some tactics I'm going to talk to you guys about through this series, and I'll probably wrap this one soon and we'll do part 2, maybe 3, 4, 5, who knows? But there's some things I'm going to tell you that I did and how I got like my second, third, fourth, fifth deal that don't work today, or I don't teach today, or they still kind of work, but I don't like them because they're not predictable. It's just random. And like, I'm not a gambler, so I don't like doing hope-based marketing. I want to tell you, listen, if you do X amount of X strategy, I guarantee you a deal within X days. Like that's just based on your KPIs. So we're going to get into all that. So a lot of these early strategies, I'll tell you which ones still work, which ones don't work, but also some of them, there's like, the original strategy works, but there's just kind of a newer way to do it, like with the use of AI and automations and all that type of stuff, right? So I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I'll tell you. One thing I did is I went and I searched for wholesalers in in my area, like in Florida. So I got on all. I signed up on all their lists as buyers, okay, as a cash buyer. Then I would call them. I'd look at their inventory and say, hey, um, I'm a newer wholesaler, but I have a buyer who might be interested in this. Didn't have a buyer at all, but I was like, if I advertise it, are you cool with that? And um will you split this deal with me? And most of these guys were like, maybe, sure, whatever. But I think most of them probably just actually said no. I don't remember the exact split. A lot of them said no. A lot of them said sure, but they were skeptical. So one guy says, yeah, I'll do that for you. Now the thing is, these guys have established buyers. They have established, buyers lists and stuff. But I know from being in the business now over a decade, a lot of people, they can be a little bit lazy with their marketing, right? They're getting deals coming in. They have a buyers list. They make an email. They shoot it out once, maybe twice a week. Then maybe don't go further than that. So what I did, man, I took this guy's property and I put it everywhere. I put it on Craigslist. Back in the day, you had Backpage, My House Deals, Facebook, like every third part, Connected Investors, Bigger Pockets, like all this stuff. Some of it doesn't even exist anymore. And not only did I do it like once or twice, I was doing this nonstop. And sometimes, you can't put the same ad on. I had multiple like logins. I would take the whatever you call it, the blurb, like the listing stuff, change up the right, put it, and I was just more aggressive, more hungry, and I was putting this stuff out everywhere. That's eventually how I found the buyer, and then I split it with that original wholesaler. So if you're starting with zero, I want you guys to understand this, or even a little bit or whatever. There is an inverse relationship between time and money. You have to spend one of the two. So if you have money, all that does is decrease the time it takes you to get deals, makes things happen a lot faster. You can do things on autopilot, things get outsourced, and it's so much better. You should always, always, always spend as much money as you can in your business. I'm not saying like spend your mortgage payment, right? But be smart about it. Spend as much as you can. There's one point my mentor told me that, and I was like, I got this, bro. I know how to do deals with no money. I'm going to keep doing it that way. And you can, but it's a lot harder, right? Things only get easier and speed up as you have money. So when we get to the next part of this story, I'm going to tell you how you could start with literally like $10, how you would spend that. $15, how you should spend that. $100, how to spend that. $1,000, how to spend that. And if you spend it on the wrong things or in the wrong order, it's just not going to give you a return. This is why you have to know your KPIs, your metrics, and you're just going to come back to zero. And it's going to be this cyclical thing where you just keep trying, coming back to zero, and then you're kind of screwed. Okay. So where am I in the story? Okay. Zero mark money down. That was just me being aggressive, finding buyers. So if you're starting from zero, one, like I did with my letter, right? Even though actually Lex never like took me up on that, it just made me stand out in his mind. And I had similar stories about that, but that's not directly related to my journey of here to there. So I'll say that for like a side quest video, right? So anyway, yeah, if you're starting with zero, here are the options you have. Joint venture with another wholesaler, right? Sell their inventory basically. And now there's a lot more people putting stuff on Facebook. Just know you got to be hungry, you got to be aggressive. There's going to be a little bit of luck involved, but have some faith, man, and just do it. And the thing is, even as you do that, right? And I'm not just saying just daisy chain shit. Like you got to communicate with people, talk to them, have permission, like do it properly. But even as you talk to buyers, that's also going to be how you start building your buyers list. So what happens is now, even if when you sign up on all these wholesalers, their lists, let's say you talk to, you're trying to market one property, you'll start talking to buyers who will hit you back on these various applications, social media, whatever. And they might not want to buy that, but they'll say, hey, but you know what? If you can get me a 3-2 in Boynton Beach, Florida, in this area, I'll buy that. And then you go back to your inbox with the other wholesalers' inventory and you look for that. And then when you find that, then you call them and say, hey, man, I actually do have this buyer who wants that. And then that's another way. So joint venture is going to be the first thing. The second thing is going to be MLS properties on market. Guys, I have tons of videos on this. I know people, there's no deals on the MLS. It's not true, okay? That's how I did the vast majority of my early deals. That actually is like bandit signs, all that other stuff. But I did a lot of deals that way. And with a lot of my students, that's how they get their first deals. It costs no money to market. There's no marketing dollars involved. And there's really no risk. There's nothing to lose. In some cases, not all, because you can do assignable contracts. In some cases, they might want some earnest money, maybe $1,000. Most of you guys, if you, man, if you get a credit card, if you sell a bunch of stuff, if you have a garage sale, if you do some overtime, if you borrow some money, if you sell your PlayStation, like you could come up with that, right? But you don't even necessarily need it. But that I can go into more details. We'll save that for another video, but I already have some of those videos that exist. So your next bet is going to be just on market properties. Remember, with off market, you're looking primarily for like situational types of distress. So it's going to be things like people in foreclosure, people getting divorced, landlords who have evicted a tenant. When we're looking on market, we're looking more for physical signs of distress. You could literally go to Zillow, type in different keywords, like keywords that would be in the description from a realtor that are indicative of distress. So it might say motivated seller, it might say perfect for investors, it might say cash buyers, it might say, damage, roof damage, Chinese drywall, termite damage, new roof needed, like whatever it is. And you can find those pretty easily. If you want to see a video where I like demonstrate how to do that and set up these searches automatically in a PDF document of all the, not an exhaustive list because there's still more keywords, but over 100 keywords, just, I don't know, email me at mike@wholesalingmike.com or message me on Instagram, MikeHillTWT, with the word, I don't know, MLS, whatever word, right? Just keywords there. Use that. I'll send you the video and the keyword thing because I'm just going over this quickly. So that's how you will do it. And then the other way is going to be just to be cold calling people. And there are ways now you can do this 100% for free. You can even get the list, get the data, skip tracing, all that stuff for free. It's just some of the skip tracing, the free stuff, expect your conversion rate to be lower, expect to have to make more calls, and expect it to take more time. Because what that means is you're going to have to be copying and pasting like addresses like I did at one point, one by one to try to find these people into a site like True People Search or Cyber Background Checks or whatever it is. But those are the primary 3 ways that you can do deals with no money down, literally. I'm probably missing something here because there are more ways. But anyway, that's how, if you're just getting started, know that you can absolutely do this. And that's why even my students, right? A lot of them come in, no money down, and then that's like I do the dispo and handle that stuff, but I showed them how to do it. And man, I'm getting ideas now for like different videos, but it's gonna take me off of my story with the these certain, I guess, milestones. And I got some other stuff for you guys where, like, again, like I said, some of this stuff I shouldn't have done. Like, oh, one story I forgot. Okay, I'll just add this in really quickly. When I first started, I think this is even before I got the revenue management job. Like when I went to the first RIA meetings, man, I didn't even have my car at that point. I borrowed my younger cousin's bicycle, right? I was living at grandma's house still. And the only thing I had, with my little savings, I made flyers, like We Buy Houses flyers. And I printed them out on her computer, and I rode my bike maybe about, like, I don't know, 10 miles to the town of Lake Worth, and I was folding up these flyers and shoving them in people's mailboxes. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but that shit is illegal. That's interfering with federal property. That's a federal crime. So I'm not saying you guys should do that. I probably have a couple more stories like that. I also took those flyers and pasted them on like bus stops. That was my first call from code violation, where they called me and I didn't get a fine, but they were like, you better come take this shit down right now. So I did end up having to take them down. But yeah, I was putting flyers in people's mailboxes. Matter of fact, later, I'm getting all over the place now, right? So I'm going to wrap this video in a second. And then maybe by like part 2, I'll keep it a little more streamlined. But anyway, was I saying? Yeah, when I went to one of these RIA meetings later, Lex, and there's this guy, David Dweck, and anyone who's in Florida, like some of the guys at that time, they were like, yo, whatever you do, don't go to Lake Worth. That place is dangerous as shit, man. They have the highest gang activity like in the country, like MS-13s out the ass. Like, it was crazy. And here I am riding a bicycle, at some points getting off, like handing people flyers, but putting them in their mailbox and stuff like that. And it's funny because at that time, a little bit later, a couple months, probably once I started my mentorship, I actually started getting deals in Lake Worth. and I was getting deals there for literally $80,000, right? Couldn't sell them. Nobody wanted them. But those same houses now, because they did this big revitalization, pumped a lot of money in, police came in, cleared the shit out, less gang activity. It became like a haven for investors, and not similar properties, like the same properties I had in maybe 2013, 14 for 80 grand. Nowadays it's selling for like 450. And it's not Lake Worth anymore, it's Lake Worth Beach. But anyway, see, I told you I'm all over the place, but I get excited when I'm taking a walk down memory lane. So anyway, I think I'm gonna wrap this video kind of like, okay, that's how I did my first deal, and that's how you could do your first deal. And there's probably some stuff I'm forgetting. So if you have questions, Mike, how do I do my first deal? If I have $0, if I have 100, if I have 1,000, ask me that, because it's probably, I mean, there are different ways to do it, but in those cases, it's like I put people into buckets. There's one best way, and again, I think I touched on this earlier, but you don't want to be one of these people. One of the most common things I get is people will watch 10 YouTube videos and they'll say, okay, I learned 10 different ways to wholesale. Let me try all 10. I'll throw everything to the wall, and eventually something's got to stick. That's the worst way to do it. It almost never works. And when it does, it's luck. I don't like luck-based stuff, right? You want to be targeted. You want to be hyper-focused, but you want to spend your money in the right places. Or if you don't have money to spend, you got to do the right things, but it's very strategic. It's very hyper and laser focused. And I could give you the metrics and the KPIs that'll tell you exactly what you need to do if you want to see those results. So I'll wrap with that. If you're kind of in one of those situations, put the link, put your question or comment in the comment section below, or you can email me, mike@wholesalingwithmike.com, or send me a message on Instagram, Mike Hill, TWT. All right. And then in part 2 of this, that's where stuff gets a little bit more interesting. That's where stuff gets crazy. That's where I'm in some places I shouldn't be. That's where I could potentially be trespassing. That's where I get my concealed carry like all right, my story's like whatever. Also, again, if I knew then what I knew now, the journey I've been on for 13 years, probably could have condensed it to like 3 years. But I digress. That's enough of me just rambling, without even an outline or a script. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. And I would love if you would interact on me. I probably missed some things even in this, right? So if you have questions or you want to hear a little bit more, let me know. Maybe, again, I'll do side quests or like side off videos. Oh, I forgot to tell you this story, right? But I'm going to do a part 2, maybe even a part 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever, right? And tell you a little bit about how, I got to this beautiful place where like, I haven't been in an office in over 13 years. I don't have a boss. I work where I want, when I work. I work from hotels. I don't even meet, by the way, buyers, sellers, or see properties anymore, whether it's, 8 hours from me or 8 minutes from me. Doesn't matter. And the big thing with that has been like, the use of different tools and software and AI and stuff like that. But some of those stuff, yeah, I pay a lot of money for that. But there's versions of it, may not all be the same. Some are very, very inexpensive, but man, talk to me, right? And I'll make videos for you guys showing you, because I've either been there, and even when I was there where I had like very little money to work with or whatever, I have students now who are coming in that situation. So even there are things that didn't exist when I started, right? Like a lot of these services, whether it's PropWire, PropStream, whatever, that shit didn't exist. But now students who are coming to me, or even just people, followers or people that hit me up, right? There are resources that I can refer you to. Okay. So man, I got all over the place at the end. So that's how I know it's time to wrap. In part 2, I'll talk to you about what happened after that first deal. How did I reinvest? How did I do my second deal? Cool story where that comes full circle. Like, I don't know, maybe 5 years later. How did I do my early deals? When did I quit my job? How did I quit my job? That was a great feeling. I'd love to tell you that story. When shit got really horrific at my job, and I was like, okay, it's time to go. I left prematurely. I'm not recommending that for everyone, but I'm going to save that for part 2. So guys, if you made it this far, I don't even know when I started this video, but I know I've been rambling for a while. I could hear my voice going. So thanks if you made it this far. Please subscribe, please share, and hopefully like just communicate, right? I've communicated with some wholesalers, and they, especially when I was first starting, they didn't want to talk to me. They didn't want to hear shit from me, or they weren't talking to you unless you were shelling out some G's. I'm more approachable, man. I'm happy to talk to you guys. I enjoy it. I even have a few free one-on-one calls I do every week. Those spots are limited. I do like 3, maybe 4 a week, but they always fill up. But if you want to grab one, there's a link in the description below. If you want to, hey, I got no money, Mike, but I'd love to work with you. There's an option for you. Obviously, I'm not going to be as involved, but there's options for you. I got training for you. I got my free course for you. If you want to do group coaching, that's budget friendly. You still get to interact with me. You get my software. So that's an option for people for one-on-one. If I have space, if it's a good match, I'm not a good match for everyone. Not everyone's a good match for me, but you can fill out an application. There's no pressure. I don't do pressure sales, any of that shit. So I'll put all those links in the description. But on that note, man, if you made it this far, props to you. Most people have like the shortest attention spans. Ask me. I got a nephew right now who's 10 years old. This guy only watches shorts. Like, I can't get him through a whole movie even. But most people don't make it that far. So if you made that far, I'm going to thank you. Please like, and then I don't know, I'll make a part 2, maybe 3, 4, 5, and I'll catch you there. Okay. So yeah, I know that was repetitive, but I get excited when I reminisce. So thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. All right, guys. Thanks again. Peace.